Hello everyone and welcome back to the Slow Car Salon for this quick and informal episode because there's a reason why part 3 hasn't come out yet. I actually finished all or most of the wiring that I wanted to publish for part 3, apart from like 2 or 3 little things which I wanted to finish up. However, when I went to try to tie up some loose ends, bleed the brakes, bleed the clutch, things like that to actually see if I could get the car to scoot around and test it on the driveway, I ran into a big problem, and that was that when I went to bleed the clutch, everything started leaking. And I went to investigate why, because with this swap, you may remember that we have a T56 hydro throwout / concentric slave cylinder piece that's in there, and this eliminates the need for an additional bell housing aside from the 1UZ Auto one, because XAT Racing provides that adapter plate from the 1UZ Auto to the W58 that also mounts the T56 hydro throwout. Now, what I noticed is that it was leaking directly through the bell housing past the inspection plate, which led me to believe that the hydro throwout was leaking somehow. I went back to my old episodes to see what exactly, maybe if I missed something really simple. And yeah, I had missed the crush washer for the bleeder screw. Because there's an inlet port and an outlet port for the bleeder. The bleeder was missing a crush washer. So I've added that now, and I'll go and show you that. But what actually was leaking was the inlet port through the split pin. I'm going to show an image on the screen now of what that looked like. And you can see it's weeping directly out of that split pin hole. Not at all where I thought it was going to be leaking from, interestingly. So, fellow Bay Area Classic Celica's member and I, Russell, he helped me drop the transmission in about just under 4 hours time. And from there, I was able to take the hydro throwout out from the bell housing. It is a real tight fit in there, but it is doable. It is doable, thankfully. And after putting the slave cylinder here on the bench and taking the fittings out, as you can see here, I've added the crush washer back in now, so that's not going to have any chance of leaking. But yeah, it was weeping out of this hole through the split pin that retains the quick disconnect to dash 4 AN fitting, and you can probably already see what's wrong here and why this was leaking. I'm going to roll this across the table and maybe you can spot it. I have no idea how, but this fitting was bent. I'm not sure if I just didn't notice it on initial install, or I don't know. I didn't seem to notice it when I installed it. It bent somehow on torquing it in there, maybe. I'm not sure. But this is the trouble area. Thankfully, these quick connect to dash 4 AN fittings are very, very common from like Jegs and Summit Racing and the like. So I'm just going to get a replacement. And thankfully, the hydro throwout itself is still good. You can see there are some witness marks from where it was contacting the clutch. But no big deal. That's going to have to get replaced. And that is what's essentially holding up the car from actually running and driving right now. I'm just flabbergasted as to why this failed. But yeah, you can get these, like 2 of them for $18 or something like that. So that's what I'm going to do, and just reuse the original hydro throwout. It appears to be a quality one with the AP stamp on it. So that means either it's an LUK or GM part, I believe. Don't quote me on that. You might have to go on LS1 Tech to actually find out what people have said about that. But this is the problem area, and I've buttoned up the area where I thought I was going to have an issue. But obviously, inlet leaks there first. It's not necessarily going to leak on the bleeder side. But I also noticed that the line on the slave over here, the line off the slave that you would use for bleeding rather, I was missing this fitting here entirely. That bridges the end of the dash 4 AN line to the brass bleeder with the nipple. So yeah, don't forget that. That was something I completely forgot per the instructions. So that was leaking too, but after easily fixing that and putting that back together, it was fine. But root cause is the fitting to the inlet of our slave cylinder. So it just took a little bit of planning to put some time aside to actually drop the transmission and diagnose what was going on. Now it's going to take a little bit of time to actually get the new bleeder fittings in and swap them back and actually put the transmission back in. As you may have noticed, I didn't take the engine out to drop the transmission. It's really tight, but it is doable. get yourself some very, very long ratcheting wrenches, closed end wrenches that is. It'll make your life way easier. And for some of the bell housing bolts along the sides of the transmission, you'll note one of them, you'll see, if you're ever down there, there's one bell housing bolt on the side of the bell housing, and you won't really be able to access it because, with the long wrench at least, because the brake booster and things like that are in the way. If you happen to take those out, you're fine, but in this case I didn't, in which case a 17mm stubby wrench would be your friend, and then you just hammer it to take the torque off and then remove it. But other than that, it was decently easy to get out and drop. I will probably do some hammer clearancing, get the old Tanya Harding and, do some of that, and clearance the transmission tunnel, because that was an area where the transmission was having a lot of trouble as far as getting out, because it was contacting the walls of the transmission tunnel. So I'm going to have to give it a little bit of love, not too much, but that's only going to be to facilitate easy servicing for this type of job, because there's a chance that I have to probably do this again in the future to replace the slave cylinder. The T56 throwout bearings are known to go out if you don't get a quality piece, so it will aid serviceability later at least. So anyways, that's what's been going on. I'm going to have to get this fixed obviously before actually getting the car on the road, but it is quite the hiccup, I'll say. I wasn't expecting it, wasn't super happy about it, but hey, at least we're half of the way there, or maybe even most of the way there, now that we know the solution as to why it was leaking and how to fix it. So I'm gonna get that done, get it all buttoned up, and once I'm done with that, and it can actually then finish the 2 or 3 things that I said for wiring part 3 that I got to get done. Those actually include the secondary O2 sensors and wiring those through the floor, so that way you don't have wires going past super hot catalytic converters. That, as well as then just tidying up all the odds and ends underneath the dash. Then that'll release that, and then I can release a final video on just essentially buttoning up the car and getting it on the road. So expect that hopefully in a few months. I am a working man after all, so I can't get updates out as fast as I previously was, in a period where I was between jobs, so I had a lot more time to release a lot of those initial episodes. So this has been a very long-term project, as a lot of these things end up being, but at least the road is very short to completion now. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.